Grady, I want to talk with you about the creation of ECA. Why did you come to see that this was something important to do, important for you and important in and of itself?
Well, it was the end of a long evolution, Michael. I think one way to begin would be to talk about reading in the Boston Globe, 20 years ago about the demise of the Texas horned toad, which is a creature that I grew up with, playing with, chasing around, putting in shoe boxes. But the horned toad was disappearing because of human activity. And when I read that, I'm not a highly emotional person, but I just began crying because it just touched my heart that we were having that kind of an impact on the planet. And so I made a mental note that I want to start spending some of my energy focusing on the environment. The term climate change was not yet in the current. And so I began donating time, working with the nonprofit advocacy organizations as a consultant, as a leadership development consultant. And after a while, that began to feel inadequate. I was influenced by the writings of Bill McKibben, who wrote in 2012 in Rolling Stone an article called "Global Warming's Terrifying New Math," which pointed out that we've got in the ground oil reserves 5 times as great as what we can afford to burn to stay within acceptable limits of carbon in the atmosphere. I found myself paying attention to activist activities. I got on a bus to go to Washington, D.C. for a rally that Bill McKibben gave on the Keystone pipeline. And that was getting on that bus was an important step over a barrier towards activism, because I had never, I'd been a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War, but I had never been an activist on any other issue. And so I began spending more and more time doing that kind of thing. And I decided to let go of my consulting practice and work full time on climate change. And so I started out by volunteering time for organizations like the Citizens Climate Lobby and 350 Mass for a Better Future. And then I got a call from a guy named Paul Severance in the summer of 2015, inviting me to Washington for something called Elders Climate Action Day. And it was the first activity of a new organization that he had founded called Elders Climate Action. And as he made the pitch to me over the phone to attend that event, I just found myself immediately resonating with the message of mobilizing elders on behalf of the climate. So I went down and I met with my senators Warren and Markey and Representative Joe Kennedy. And I felt like for the first time I was really participating like a citizen, in a democracy. And when I got back, I decided that ECA was just a shell. It was just a virtual organization with no particular headquarters and no location anywhere physically. And I decided to start the first state chapter here in Massachusetts. So I just sent out a note to friends and colleagues and invited them to a meeting in my living room, and started working with those that showed up, including yourself, to establish the chapter. So that was in November of 2015. It took us a few months to get momentum, but we gradually began attracting more and more people to those meetings, monthly meetings, and it just grew from there. And I recruited a leadership team, of which you were a member, that was the people that were more engaged and whom I could count on to take initiative. And so people started doing that. And so you began the Facebook initiative, for example, is one of many examples of people stepping up and taking leadership. And so I did that for 5 years, if not more. And then the chapter really blossomed. We made an early decision to focus on influencing the legislature. That seemed like the opportunity in Massachusetts that was most prime. And so we organized ourselves for doing lobby days, showing up and knocking on doors of legislators and holding meetings with representatives on key committees. That has continued to be a principal focus of ECA, culminating, I think, in last year in the passage of the most significant climate legislation in over a decade, the Roadmap for a Better Future that Representative Joan Moschino had authored. And we supported her and got public credit as having been instrumental to passing the bill when it finally went through last year and got signed. Yeah, so that's, in a nutshell, that's the story.
Thank you, Grady, for sharing that story of ECA Mass's beginnings. And I was very struck the other day in the New Dawn event that Seth and Tina and Mayim and others pulled together, where almost 200 people participated, including some of the key climate players in the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah, and including me.
And including you. And seeing you there and thinking about how that event and everything else that's happened with ECA and everything that's going to happen with ECA is really flowing out of your initiative. And it just was powerful for me to reflect on your impact. So I was feeling grateful to you.
I was feeling very good about that event. I felt a sense of pride that something that I had started, it began with just a few people, had expanded so that it included as many people as were on that that event, and including speakers that whom I know and respect in the legislature. So it just felt very good, Michael.
If you're comfortable saying something about this, Grady, I think it would be most interesting if you wanted to say something about your immersion in, your life in the Buddhist practice, and how has that impacted your development as an activist?
Well, I've had a meditation practice for over 50 years. And for the last 30 some odd years, it's been Buddhist influenced. I think that has reinforced my evolution in terms of commitment to the climate. It wasn't a significantly contributing factor. There's a parallel with my own development. The Buddhist community began evolving a commitment to the climate, and there's terms like eco-dharma being tossed around, and there's a bodhisattva vows, which are vows on behalf that people can take on behalf of doing something for the climate. So it's been a strong supporting practice. What does the word activist mean to you? For me, I think an activist is somebody who stands up and steps forward and puts themselves on the line on behalf of something, and is willing to be visible to others and try to mobilize others to follow and just follow the lead. I want to see if I can dig into this a little bit more. ECA National had a town hall meeting with Dennis Kucinich, and somebody asked Kucinich, how do you find the courage to do what you do? And Kucinich responded, well, courage is something that you do every day, and the more you do it, the less you think of it as courage. Mm-hmm. Do you think of yourself as a courageous person? Yeah, I don't particularly think of myself as being a courageous person. I think of myself as having an identity that acquired the notion of being a climate change activist, and that's just kind of who I am. So it just became natural to show up in support of that identity. Nice. It's just like voting. You show up, you vote because you're a voter, not because you necessarily care about a particular election, although you may care a lot. But this notion of being a voter is part of your identity. And for me, becoming a climate change activist became part of who I thought I was. And so it was part of my contract with myself to show up and behave in ways that others might perceive as courageous.
If you think of the trajectory that ECA is on, the life that it is leading, and you think forward in whatever time frame, 5 years, 10 years, more, what aspirations do you have for this organization that you founded?
Well, I aspire to no more than the wish that it continue to evolve as it has evolved. I've got there are people doing things that I didn't have the imagination to think of, and showing up in numbers that go beyond my personal network of friends and colleagues. It's growing and thriving, and so I would just wish for that fertile environment for activism to continue.
Do you have images that you would like for future members of ECA and for perhaps ECA as a totality to hold in one's mind that will help this organization navigate what is obviously a very turbulent future that we're all facing?
Yeah. Well, what reassures me from time to time is when I think of the sequoia tree, the giant redwoods, and how they're majestic, tall, deeply rooted, and connecting. They're strong individuals, but they're connected to one another underground, and so it's like a community of strong individuals bound together. And so I take inspiration from that image.
That's beautiful. My heart is so full speaking with you on whatever the topic might be. And on this occasion, it has to do with an organization that you created and to which I am deeply committed. And I thank you very much for your seeding the thoughts and feelings that people we don't even know of yet will have as a result of this conversation. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Michael. And it's given me a full heart as well. So thank you.